So it's 12:01 a.m. on Thursday. There's Thursday night football tonight. And like imagine you're having like the boss over for dinner and the house is just a complete mess. Like everything's dirty. You do laundry, you need to do dishes. And tonight the boss is coming over. Well, I know everyone's waiting for the NFL algorithm, and let me tell you, the file is a mess. It's a mess. And I looked over it after adding in all the stats and I realized, darn it. Um, I know what's going on and I have some ideas on how to fix it. And I'm going to be spending apparently a lot of time over the next day or two adjusting C scores for each players. But I want to explain the process I'm going to go through. Maybe you'll have a little bit of compassion for my plight as you see what I'm going to end up doing while we talk about the Thursday night game. So this was obvious when you looked at this. Don't pay any attention to these scores. They are not right. Okay, let me show you why. So Thursday, right now, it is saying Minnesota over the Eagles in Philadelphia, 2016. Seems ridiculous. The odds makers have a huge, the Eagles are a big favorite and Minnesota is a big underdog. Makes sense. What is happening? I'll tell you what's happening. So our point projections are they are accumulated from the current season stats right now for the players. Well, the issue we have is that certain ratings for players are distorted at this point of the season. And a lot of players don't even have any ratings right now because they didn't do anything in the first game. So we're going to run a comparison between Minnesota and Philadelphia. And what you see is that, oh, wow. If you remember looking at this file last week and taking a look at what the grand totals of the player contributions were in here last week, they had a lot of different players that had played all across the season. And we had multiple quarterbacks in here, and we had a much fuller look at players that played. And these numbers added up to 4 and 5, not 3.3 and 2.7. So we're missing a lot of stuff. So we actually have to manually kind of figure this out. I adjusted quarterback ratings to make them more streamlined because there was another problem I'm having to talk about in this video. So I brought stuff down. This looks a little different from the version I emailed people today that subscribe to pay for a copy of this. I worked on that, and now we have to do something with the other players. So we have to say, does this make sense? Like kicker should have a good rating. Joseph, that makes sense. Jefferson, good receiver, should have a good rating. He does. Jordan Addison, good rating. Kirk Cousins, okay rating. Alexander Madison, okay. This is actually looking pretty full. Like you've got 2 tight ends with ratings, you've got 3 receivers, and you've got 2 running backs and a quarterback. Okay. Don't have anything down here for these other receivers, but you can see that this looks like a fairly full roster. Let me compare Philadelphia to that. Look at what Philadelphia has. Philadelphia has a kicker, Jake Elliott. Jalen Hurts, better rating than Cousins, you would expect. Okay, not bad. Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown. Here's where we have hardly any running. And low receiver here, and nothing for tight ends. Okay. So here's what needs to happen. Dallas Goedert is a good player. I don't know about this Grant Calcutta guy. Is he the second? He's a 4th string tight end? Who's the 2nd string tight end? 3rd string tight end. I guess the 2nd string is Jack Stoll. We're going to put Jack Stoll and Dallas Goedert in here. I remember Goedert having a real rating. This is the kind of stuff we have to do. Is Goedert a 0.01? No, he's not. He's better than that. I know that generally. So we got to get a decent rating in him. And I guess we do something like, is he a TJ Hawkinson type player? I think he is. So we're going to give him TJ Hawkinson's rating right here of a 0.23 to equalize this out a little bit. And we're going to give Jack Stoll at least a 0.1 to give him something because he's probably going to get a target or 2, even though he didn't in week 1. Also, you can see that our rushing for Philadelphia, not great. Well, is it not great, or did they just not need to rush against the Patriots, or did the Patriots hold them? These are questions that I don't know the answer to. But we just added a couple people in there. So what does that do? It's going to change the score. We have to refresh this in a couple places. Go here to projection pivot. You refresh this thing. We just got a rating in here for these tight ends. And now we go back to the pick sheet. And now all of a sudden, it's 2018. Okay. And it's starting to get closer. All right. Now, as I go through each one of these lineups, because this is apparently what we have to do, man, that stinks. It really stinks because I don't like creating numbers for players, but it seems like, for example, I think we want to raise Boston Scott's rating a bit. I think he's better than a 0.11. We're comparing him to Alexander Madison, who ran on Tampa Bay. Is he going to run like that on Philadelphia? Probably not. We've got we've got a strength of schedule disparity in the rating of the players. Players that played against bad teams are inflated because they got more points in week one. Players that played against good teams are deflated because they didn't have enough offensive pressure in week one. It's why I'm almost tempted to try to throw all of last year's stats in here. But I also want to look at this to learn about each game because I'm going to be able to explain it to you. So what I'm seeing here in this is that, yes, Minnesota's defense is not going to play as well as the Patriots defense did at home. So I feel better inflating Boston Scott to have a better game against Minnesota. And this is how you would do that. Let's just give them a 0.3 game instead of 0.11. Okay. We do that. We refresh. We go back here. We refresh. All of a sudden, it's a 2019 game. So you start to see things are starting to make a little sense. Now, what else is it saying, though? It's also saying that somehow this is closer than we all think, because Minnesota has offensive potential. And another thing that's of concern, sorry to keep jumping around, but another thing that's an issue is the defensive injury ratings. We haven't had enough things like sacks and forced fumbles and interceptions to properly rate the impact of who's out on defense. You can see almost every defensive player has a rating of 0, hardly any other. If they don't have at least a sack, they end up not getting a rating at all. And that starts to clean itself up further out in the season. So this is another thing that affects scoring because we look at defense injuries that is just so terribly incomplete here in week 2. I'm sorry to complain about how really difficult this is, but there's a reason why I used to say you can't count on this thing till week 4. I know everyone wants to count on it, and so do I. So I'm going above and beyond to rate these players and do everything I can to get it as right as possible. But boy, it'll be nice when we have 4 games in here, right? It'll be awesome. Even 3 games is almost good enough for me. But 1 is terrible and 2 is also bad. You can see that within the standing sheet, for example, in the standings thing that comes out, they don't even have a defensive rating or an SRS rating or an offensive rating for these teams yet because they've only played 1 game. They don't even do it yet. It's you're dividing by 0. It's impossible. So just a mess. So the point is here that this game is actually apparently a closer game than the odds makers think. This game ends up looking like Minnesota puts up a few more points than we would think, but everything's a disaster. Everything's a disaster. I'll go through it one by one, and I'll try to do the best I can here with ratings on people to get this more reasonable. But understand that what you see here is not okay. It's just not. So I will get an email out to everyone that paid for this. The video, there's no reason for me. There is a reason for me to do a video. The video is definitely going to be private while I talk through all these games. But as you can see, for example, some of the things I'll talk about, the Chargers are not going to probably win 35-15. They scored a lot on no defense Miami, which is inflating their points here. We have to put in some more points for Tennessee. We have to really shrink some of the ratings for the Chargers because they're not playing against the Tennessee defense. or they're not playing against a Miami defense, they're playing against a much probably better Tennessee defense. I'm sorry. It's a lot to deal with. So as for, yeah, this is a light week when it comes to betting. If you're putting a lot of money with what the algorithm says this week, you are really playing with fire, because when it comes to the inputs that are going in here, a lot of it has to be arbitrary because there simply is not enough. So we need to accept from a mathematical perspective, from a data assurance, from sanitizing this data, from understanding the composition of this data and whether or not it's valid. I have to tell you that this week is a bad week to think it's going to do a good thing, because I'm going to have to guess right on a lot of players and a lot of situations. And while I've watched a lot of football so far in week 1, and I will continue to watch in week 2, I know that the way this thing works the best is when I'm not doing stuff to it, when it is doing it itself with the numbers. So there's clearly not enough numbers in here to provide a relevant enough prediction. Unless everything comes out just like this, that'd be the funniest thing ever. I don't think it is, though. So I will send out an update to those who subscribed and purchased, and try to get something better than this, but just really, really just take it easy. You want to downvote the video because there's not really good prediction in week 2, go ahead. But I have to be honest with you, because if I told you that I'm going to get this thing great for week 2, there's no way. There's no way you can get this thing perfect. You're guessing too much. We did really good in week 1, which makes me think I just should use this prior season stats, and we're probably going to do pretty good. And that's probably what's going to end up happening for a lot of these numbers to get things what I think is accurate. And what I think is accurate is, yeah, the Chargers probably beat the Titans, but it's not this bad. Tampa Bay could beat the Bears. They absolutely looked awful. So I believe that. Arizona could beat the Giants because the Giants absolutely looked like a novice team, but Arizona also stinks. So I don't, this pick is messy. It's just the Giants did so bad getting shut out by Dallas in week 1. What do you do? Buffalo, I think the Raiders actually have a good chance against Buffalo, believe it or not, but it is Buffalo at home. Seattle could beat Detroit. Detroit has some injury, by the way, defensive injury. It's kind of big. Patriots should beat Miami. That I would believe. Baltimore should definitely beat Cincinnati with Burrow's situation. They'll probably score more on Cincinnati. Atlanta says would be great. I don't know about that. Green Bay really impressed me, even though Chicago was bad. And this is a toss-up game. I see why it's a plus 110, right? I know we're just doing a video now. This is what I think, because you got to sanitize this by reading. The Browns probably beat the Steelers, did not impress against San Francisco, and the Browns did impress against Cincinnati. The Rams came out with a weird, surprising win, but the Niners crushed it in week 1. So there's this amazing plus 290. There is probably a little bit more value in the Rams than you would think, though, given that they played pretty well in week 1. And Pittsburgh, I think, is actually just in trouble this year, which is why it's made San Francisco look a little better in week 1. So this has some potential, actually. Commanders over the Broncos in a low-scoring game, I believe that. Houston over Indianapolis, yikes. Saints over the Panthers, I believe that. I think the Saints will win by more, though. Says the Jets over the Cowboys. I don't know about that. That's going to be a heck of a game. And, of course, Minnesota over the Eagles really doesn't seem like that should happen. But it's probably closer than we think. It's probably closer than 7 somehow, because Minnesota somehow puts up points. And Jaguars over the Chiefs, really in a close game. I do believe that. And it'd probably be extremely close and go either way. So going through that, what looks totally suspect is Arizona, Atlanta, sort of the Rams, but not really, sort of the Texans, and Minnesota. Those 4 look ridiculous. Everything else on here is kind of okay. And any of the underdogs that I agree with is Seattle can beat Detroit. But Detroit played what? Yeah, no, actually, they're plus 210. So this is another one where, I don't know, really tough, guys. I'm sorry. It's tough. And while I'm going to do what I can, obviously, I'm also not going to completely just go berserk and try to do the impossible here. All right. So good luck, everyone. We'll see what the picks do. There might be a later video after I update all this that I make public, but I'm definitely doing a private one once I update all the player stats to last year to see if it does better things with the point projections. But how good can it get? It's just going to be a mess. All right, sorry. May all your picks be winning. Get lucky this week. That's what you need to do. Is you need to get lucky because I don't know how much the algorithm is going to help this early on.